Thank you very much. I can say that as a Prime Minister, it's not so often you can address a few hundred people who actually wish you well. It usually doesn't work that well, so it's great to be here among friends. And of course, Manfred and I worked together for almost 10 years when I was in the Parliament. I know him, how should we say, inside and out, and I think we have a great new leader. Wishing you, Manfred, all the best. So, February 24th, the world really changed. It changed in a profound way, where all of us feared it could happen. Rarely anyone believed that Russia would actually frontally attack a peaceful European neighbor. But the fact is that for more than 3 months, we have an atrocious World War II-style, completely destructive war in Europe. And I'm convinced of one thing, that the only way to restore peace and security in Europe is to ensure that Russia loses the war. It is in our interest that Russia loses the war and Ukraine wins. And why is this? Any other solution will simply mean that Russia licks its wounds, rebuilds its army, and then it's just a question of time. They will move again, whether it's against Ukraine or some other neighboring country, we don't know. But Putin's revisionist, expansionist, imperialistic thinking is a threat to all of our security. Therefore, collectively, we have to ensure that he loses this war for our own security and for the security of the world, actually. So how can we do this? There are 4 things that we need to do: militarily, financially, economically, and politically. Militarily, we must, as a bloc of democratic countries, continue to support Ukraine's military. They need armaments, they need weapon systems, they need instruction, they need, of course, the funds for all of this. We must support them militarily because we see that the Ukrainian army is very capable of fighting if we give them the weapons to fight with. My own country, Latvia, we provided weapons before the war started. Thankfully, before the war started. The Ukrainian ambassador in Riga tells me that actually the Stingers that we provided helped to repel the Russian initial attack in the airport by Kyiv. And I'm very thankful to that. But I'm extremely thankful also to all of our other friends and neighbors who have been contributing weapons, and the decisions that have been taken since February 24th were unthinkable 4 months ago. Even the European Union is pooling money together to buy weapon systems for Ukraine. We must continue and persevere so that they can defend their territory. Secondly, we need to continue to support Ukraine in all other ways. So they need financial assistance. They need to keep their government working. They need to pay for their schools, for their doctors, for their hospitals. They need to pay their outwardly debt. They need humanitarian aid. They need aid for their hospitals, etc. We must continue this as well. Then there's a third that I label as economic. And the way to help Ukraine in this way is to isolate Russia's economy. We do this through sanctions. We now have approved, just this week, yesterday, the 6th sanction package, which mostly gets most of Russia's oil. I have argued since February 24th that we need a full energy embargo because Russia gains most of its cash from exporting energy. So if we sanction this energy, we stop the money flowing into the coffers, and they have a more difficult time supporting the war efforts. So we have to persevere in the sanctions. We pay the cost of higher prices, but we have to remind our citizens that the Ukrainians are paying the cost in lives, in destroyed infrastructure, in destroyed lives. So we have to persevere, stay strong on the sanctions, and look for ever more ways to pull in the financial reins on Moscow so that they cannot wage this war. And finally, politically, we need to support Ukraine. And I think it's extremely important that we, as the EPP, state outright and clearly that we support the candidacy status for Ukraine in the EU. And we don't hesitate on this at all. This is important also for Ukraine, for their soldiers, for their citizens, as they are experiencing the war. They need this light at the end of the tunnel. And as the head of the Latvian government, I remember very well how important accession to the EU was for enabling reforms. But that was in a time of peace. We are now at a time of war, and I think we have to take away our last hesitancies and grant them candidacy status so that they can begin to actually work towards this goal. And what about ourselves? We also need to strengthen ourselves in Europe. We need to strengthen ourselves militarily. So my country is now, we're already paying about 2.2% of our budget, of our GDP into our defense budget. We made a decision that we're moving that to 2.5%. It's very important that we strengthen ourselves, and all of us have to do this. Another topic that we have to do with what that is in our power is energy independence. In Europe, we have built up over the course of decades a very high energy independence on Russian imports. And we see that geostrategically this is a problem. But it's also a problem from the climate point of view because these are fossil fuels. So in moving away from Russian energy, there are two ways to do it. One is, of course, diversify sources. Buy from the Americans, buy from Qatar, buy from other countries. That's the easy part. The tougher part, and what we have to persevere in, is moving into more renewables and more energy efficiency. Becoming independent of Russian energy is not decoupled from doing something good for the environment. And as the EPP, we have to stand on both fronts and move in this direction. And finally, on disinformation. In all of our societies, whether we realize it or not, Russia is very active in sending out a false narrative of what is going on. In ordinary language, we call these lies. Russia is trying to convince and is making some headway in great parts of the world, in Africa especially, that the problem of food prices, of grain prices, is because of European sanctions. This is an outright lie. The reason that food prices are going up is because Russia is waging war in Ukraine, and we have to come back with our narrative and counter Russia's lies. We have to take out the Russian disinformation channels coming into our countries. My country alone, Latvia, has shut down more than 60 Russian television channels and more than 100 internet sites that are purporting lies and propaganda. We need to do this around Europe because we need to clear up our citizens' minds so that we can keep our focus on who is at fault. It is 100% clearly Russia's fault. And just to sum up, I am convinced that as democracies, we need not be afraid of strength. Quite the contrary, as democracies, we need to be strong because we stand for three basic ideals: freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, not the rule of force. The Ukrainians are giving up their lives fighting for the values that we all defend. So we must be strong in defending these values. We must be united in defending these values. We will overcome the evil that is now in the world if we persevere, if we stick together, and if we stay strong as the EPP. Thank you very much.